The anime begins with Kamito half asleep in class when his friend wakes him for lunch. But before this couch dweller lazy bum can even process this monumental task, a group of muscular men storms into the hallway. They snatch this poor boy and haul him out of the school like a sack of potatoes. He is then dumped in front of an academy, so glamorous it makes Buckingham Palace look like a pig shelter. A prim, proper maid greets him and introduces herself as Miyuki. Kamito asks her if this is a prank, but she totally ignores him. She explains that this is Seiken Girls Academy, an exclusive hidden school for the daughters of the richest families in the country. These girls have been so sheltered from the real world that their social skills are basically non-existent. They have never seen a cell phone, eaten fast food, or even talked to a male who was not their 70-year-old butler. Then Kamito is dragged before the principal, an attractive woman named Sayuri, who drops the bombshell. The girls at this academy are social outcasts and have no idea what the world of a common man is like. Upon graduation, they enter the real world and completely lose their minds when faced with mundane, normal life. So the school has devised a brilliant, totally not insane plan. Abduct a random guy to be a showman sample, a living, breathing commoner for the girls to study and analyze like a fluttering insect in a lab. Kamito, still trying to process his own abduction, cannot understand why he was chosen for this ridiculous mission. Like a complete psychopath, Miyuki explains that they needed someone perfectly average, a guy with no special talents who would pose no threat to the girls' purity. The school even conducted an in-depth background check on Kamito for the past 6 months. They concluded that since Kamito is always hanging out with boys, he must have no interest in the opposite gender. This revelation leaves the proud thigh connoisseur utterly horrified. Kamito frantically tries to deny this accusation and insists that he is as straight as an arrow, but Sayuri and Miyuki hit him with an ultimatum. He can either play along with a homosexual role, or they will have to remove his little instrument to ensure the student's safety. Faced with a choice between a harmless lie and the very real threat of castration, Kamito makes the only logical decision. He leans into the harmless lie and confirms his deep, passionate love for muscular male physiques. Then he is immediately taken to a classroom full of curious girls with butter-smooth thighs. Before Kamito can even adjust his biological instrument, a blonde beauty named Reiko steps forward with her juggernauts and introduces herself as the class president. This girl embodies grace and politeness, but Kamito's response is awkward at best. The girls are utterly fascinated by this commoner behavior and begin whispering and gossiping among themselves. But the moment his phone rings, all the girls in the class lose their stupid minds. Miyuki quickly takes charge of the situation and assures the girls that it is just an electronic gadget. She explains that it is used to contact other people or, in Kamito's case, watch thigh videos on the internet. The aristocratic girls treat the device like an alien artifact while Kamito stands there in stunned disbelief. But being the responsible one, Reiko, the blondie, volunteers for the terrifying task of returning it. She prepares for this mission as if it is a diplomatic summit, writing a thank you letter, decorating a box, and placing chocolates inside, all just to hand back a phone. The poor girl with massive juggernauts is so nervous that when she finally presents it to Kamito, she nearly faints from the absolute culture shock. Acting quickly, Kamito has to catch her just to keep her from face-planting on the floor. Just as he thinks it cannot get any weirder, a short-haired girl named Aika ambushes him and drags him out to the garden. She desperately tries to kiss Kamito while he struggles to control this little freak. It turns out that Aika heard a rumor that kissing a commoner will grant her a wish. Kamito repeatedly tells her it is nothing but nonsense, but being a guy, he decides to mess with her. He tells Aika that if she jumps 3 times and barks like a dog, her wish will actually come true. To his utter disbelief, this stupid freak actually starts jumping and barking, desperate to fulfill her mysterious wish. She even rolls around a garden for this. But just then, Reiko appears with her friends, worried for Kamito's safety. At this point, Aika does not respond. She simply gets up and frantically runs away from the garden in pure embarrassment. It turns out that Aika never speaks to anyone in the school as she is painfully self-conscious. Later, Miyuki shows Kamito to his new room, which comes with an extra layer of security to keep him safe from the excited girls at night. To his shock, the room is an exact replica of his old one, right down to the butter-smooth thigh posters on the wall. Since he is not allowed to be a straight man in this school, Kamito frantically rips them down in a panic. Before she leaves, Miyuki informs him that she is now his personal maid, but she makes it perfectly clear that she has no intention of actually helping him because she finds him weird. As soon as Miyuki leaves, Aika bursts into his room, furious that her wish did not come true. She continues yelling at Kamito, but is suddenly distracted by the commoner artifacts in his room. Aika reveals her deepest wish is to become popular and make friends, but her blunt personality always gets in the way. Seeing an opportunity, Kamito proposes a deal. He promises to teach her about commoner culture if she helps him navigate the academy. He then hands her a video game controller. and within minutes she is hooked on the video game. Fired up to chase her dream, Aika suggests they create a commoner club where they will recruit more and more girls over time. After a moment's hesitation, Kamito agrees, and Aika is filled with a joy she has not felt in years. Later that evening, Kamito takes to a big stage to explain how a commoner lives his life. The aristocratic girls bombard him with questions, and Kamito hesitantly explains things like train tickets to the amazed students. Seeing the genuine excitement on her classmates' faces, Aika feels a glimmer of hope that maybe she can finally fit in and become the popular girl she has always dreamed of. The next day, Kamito receives a rude awakening from his personal maid, Miyuki. She wastes no time reminding him how much she resents her new duties, which naturally freaks out Kamito. Miyuki explains that as his maid, she is required to help him get dressed. But this is too much for the poor boy to handle. For a brief moment, she even doubts whether Kamito is truly a straight man, but he eventually surrenders himself and lets the maid dress him. To avoid becoming the main exhibit in the commoner freak show, Miyuki advises Kamito to use the back door to get to class. Apparently, his very presence causes a level of excitement usually reserved for boy bands and free pizza. But of course, even the back door is not safe. He immediately runs into Aika. The two then walk to class together, where Aika declares that she also uses the back door, thinking this is some kind of cool kid secret. She then reminds him that their commoner club activities are starting today, a club he basically invented on the spot to manage her frantic quest for social relevance. Along the way, Kamito tries to strike a deal with Aika. He will teach her the sacred ways of the common folk if she explains how this academy actually works. Aika is surprised he would ask her instead of the school's reigning queen, Reiko. Since Kamito has the social grace of a runaway train, he explains that Reiko is just too cute and makes him nervous, whereas Aika does not. This earns him a well-deserved slap, and the little brat storms away in fury. Just as they reach the classroom, they're intercepted by the flawless Reiko herself. She greets both Kamito and his eccentric friend, though Aika remains the social outcast she usually is. Reiko then proposes a welcome party for Kamito after class, and he nervously agrees. The suggestion drips with elegance and good intentions, and it immediately sends a jolt of jealousy through Aika. During class, Reiko soaks up all the praise from both her teacher and her annoying aristocratic classmates, leaving Aika isolated once again. But when Aika tries to jump, she ends up in a position that boys seem to love for some reason. As the poor girl sits alone, bruised and battered, Kamito receives moist attention from other girls, hoping they will get some commoner action in bed. Moments later, Kamito finds himself at the welcome party, which is painfully posh for his taste. When it is time to order food, he does not understand a single item and simply orders some Japanese food. However, the maids arrive with a cup of instant ramen, courtesy of his arch-enemy, Miyuki. The gesture feels less like a thoughtful meal and more like a passive-aggressive jab at his social standing. But Reiko and the other girls are completely baffled by the concept of instant noodles, staring at the pot as if it is an alien artifact. Kamito explains that simply adding hot water will cook it, a revelation that blows their stupid, sheltered minds. He offers them a taste, and the girls eagerly present their finest porcelain bowls and silver spoons. They are instantly hooked by the taste while their faces light up with the pure joy of discovering cheap processed food. Meanwhile, Aika is spotted eating alone, mumbling to herself that she prefers the solitude. Later that night, they all get dressed for the dance party where Reiko raises a toast to Kamito. A full brass band strikes up a tune, and the students begin dancing like a swarm of mosquitoes. Reiko notices Kamito looking uncomfortable and asks what is wrong. He admits he does not know how to dance, as it is not exactly a regular pastime in the world of ordinary people. But seeing her disappointment, Kamito reluctantly agrees to give it a shot. What follows is a spectacle of awkward, clumsy movements that the other girls mistake for authentic commoner dance moves. He nearly sends Reiko flying, which could have been disastrous, but he manages to catch her in a dramatic dip. For some godforsaken reason, this chaotic performance earns a round of applause from the entire room of stupid girls. Kamito finally meets up with Aika for their commoner club meeting. She gets angry at him for being late, but Kamito explains he was detained by the welcome party from hell. Aika is eager to begin her transformation into a popular girl, and asks him what the books are for. Kamito explains they are manga, but the little brat has no idea what that is. He explains how to read them, and Aika dives in, becoming completely engrossed in the storyline. She spends hours and hours going through the manga books, not realizing Kamito is looking at her with thirsty flagpoles. Her innocence is on full display as she starts to believe that the over-the-top stories are real. Aika thinks that all teenage commoners must have superpowers, so now she wants to become a supernatural psychic and enslave the commoner to fulfill her nighttime desires. Kamito has never encountered someone this dumb, so he decides to troll this little girl and plays along. He teaches her how to summon her powers, and Aika immediately puts them to the test, attempting to stop time. As she stands confused, Kamito, the master prankster, pretends to be frozen in place. Convinced she possesses godlike abilities, Aika taunts him and bounces around the room with pure delight. She flips her skirt in Kamito's face and even leans in for a kiss on the lips, but the poor boy cannot handle the pressure and breaks character. Aika thinks that she can only stop time for a minute, but just then Kamito reveals that he was just messing around with her. Once again, the furious Aika lands a solid uppercut on his face. Meanwhile, Reiko is taking a hot bath with her juggernaut watermelons, dreaming about a steamy night with Kamito. But just as she opens the door to leave, she bumps into Kamito, who gets to peek at every curve of her majestic body. After a moment of awkwardness, he apologizes profusely and runs away like a startled child. However, Reiko is completely in love with him and starts blushing uncontrollably. The next day in class, the two sit together, where Reiko is floating on cloud 9, secretly dreaming of marrying him. Since her innocence was compromised last night, Reiko wants to submit her body to Kamito and acts like a complete fool, leaving the entire class stunned. Morning breaks at Seiken Girls Academy, where Kamito is jolted awake by his archenemy maid, Miyuki. She reveals that Kamito's parents agreed to make him homosexual in exchange for a complete home renovation and a beautiful bathroom. She then snatches Kamito's phone and tries to send a message to his parents confessing how much he likes muscular men. However, the paranoid boy stops her just in time. As usual, Kamito sits down for breakfast, constantly under the watchful eyes of the girls. He has long realized that privacy is virtually non-existent for him at this academy. Seeking some solitude, he sits alone in the academy compound where he notices a small girl furiously scribbling complex mathematical equations on the ground. She is completely in her own world, almost as if she is high on narcotics. Kamito curiously approaches her, but suddenly the girl begins to peel off her clothes while scribbling in the world-renowned position. Kamito immediately covers the girl, but just then he notices a couple of girls approaching them. Acting quickly, he takes the little girl to his room. Kamito learns that her name is Hakua and she is a bona fide math genius who loses herself in equations and sometimes forgets about basic things like her clothes. Hakua admits she cannot dress herself properly, so Kamito reluctantly steps in to help. It is a truly awkward moment, but a necessary one because Hakua has special needs. After a brief but bizarre exchange, Hakua mentions that she is hungry, so Kamito, the ultimate commoner, whips up some instant ramen. At first, the aristocratic girl seems hesitant about this commoner food, but she eventually decides to try it out. Within seconds, Hakua devours the entire bowl and, without further ado, lies down on the floor to sleep. Just as Kamito leans in to wake her up, she jolts awake and immediately starts scribbling equations across his desk. Hakua once again starts shedding her clothes. Just as Kamito tries to manage the situation, Aika bursts into the room. Seeing Kamito holding Hakua along with her discarded underwear in his hand, Aika jumps to the wildest conclusion, thinking he is worse than R. Kelly. Later, Kamito accompanies Hakua to her laboratory, a giant building dedicated to mathematicians and scientists. Hakua's maid explains that she is a child prodigy whose mathematical insights are so valuable that they must be photographed immediately. Scientists from all around the world use her work as an inspiration, which leaves Kamito genuinely surprised. When the maid tries to get Hakua her lunch, Kamito reassures her that he gave Hakua some instant ramen. This shocks the maid because Hakua refuses to eat anything other than her regular bland food. But just as he tries to leave, the little girl holds on to Kamito's sleeve and asks him to stay with her. He gently reassures her that she can visit him anytime, while the maid slams her head in disbelief since Hakua is very comfortable with Kamito. That night, Hakua's maid shares the incident with her friends about how she was finally comfortable with another human being. All of them seem genuinely happy for Hakua, but since she is just a little girl, they decide to keep a watchful eye on Kamito. The next day, Kamito is escorted into class by his main piece, Reiko, who is completely in love with him. But before he can respond, the group is joined by Karen, a tall girl with striking black hair and a permanent katana accessory. She has a Sigma mindset aura, but when a tiny insect appears in her vision, Karen gets terrified and tries to dispatch the bug with her sword. To the horrified onlookers, it appears as if she is attacking Kamito. He tries to explain the situation to them, but Karen maintains the charade and calls him an insect and challenges him to a battle. She starts chasing after him and attacks him with a strike, but Kamito barely manages to escape. However, Karen launches a whirlwind of sword slashes, which end up slicing the uniforms of all the surrounding girls, leaving them in their underwear. While everyone is terrified, Reiko seems to enjoy this a little more. When Kamito's own uniform is also shredded into pieces, the aristocratic girls are deeply embarrassed by this, causing Karen to fume with rage and attack Kamito. Faced with a stupid accusation of being filthy, Kamito is forced to take the offensive instead of running away from her. In this brutal clash, Kamito is left standing on top of Karen. As his pants disintegrate into molecules, his ding-dong hangs right in front of his opponent. After this peculiar half-naked confrontation, Karen is impressed by Kamito's unexpected strength and wonders how a commoner could defeat her in a battle. However, she is determined to win and challenges Kamito to a rematch. Once again, her remaining clothes are cut off, leaving her in her underwear. Convinced of the vast difference in their power, Karen dramatically declares that she will become Kamito's assistant from now on. She vows to serve him until she becomes strong enough to defeat him. With this, Karen cements herself as arguably the most intense member of Kamito's growing circle of friends. Later in the corridors, the other students whisper in awe about the commoner who managed to tame the formidable Karen, turning her into his devoted follower. The scene then shifts to Kamito's room, which has now become the unofficial headquarters of the Commoners Club. Aika is there sharing her grand plan with Kamito to throw a party to finally become the most popular girl in class. Kamito thinks it is a decent idea but points out the logistical problem. They will need a lot of phones to invite everyone. At that moment, Hakua, the child prodigy, appears out of nowhere. She settles comfortably on Kamito's lap as if he were her guardian. She then offers to build the necessary phones in her lab, solving their problem instantly. Seeing the effortless closeness between Hakua and Kamito, Aika cannot hide her envy. Her irritation only grows when Karen enters the room and formally declares that she now belongs to Kamito. She plans to spend as much time with him as possible until she is strong enough for a true victory, which only sounds like she needs some ground and pound. The conversation is abruptly cut short by an increasingly jealous Aika, who rudely asks Kamito why he is so nice to everyone else but her. Kamito assures her that his feelings for her are pure, which makes him act so straightforwardly toward her. Overwhelmed with embarrassment, Aika bolts out of the room and lets out a frustrated scream in the hallway, only to be stopped by a maid who hands her a box. She returns with a package, revealing custom-built mobile phones that Hakua had built for them. Since the devices are not connected to the internet, Hakua volunteers to hack into the Academy's Wi-Fi. Now giddy with joy thanks to the little genius, Aika suggests they take a selfie together. As she tries to snap a picture of herself, Kamito, and Hakua, Karen shyly admits that she wants to be in the shot as well. It is a small and awkward moment, but it marks the official formation of the core members of the Commoners Club at Saikon Academy. The next day, Reiko and her friends corner Kamito in class, hoping to spend time with him. She invites him to a tea party in her room, a distraction to make him fall for her gigantic airbags. One of her friends almost reveals their true intentions, but Reiko immediately covers her mouth. Before Kamito can process the invitation, Aika swoops in like a territorial bird, grabbing his arm and reminding him to have an urgent club meeting. When the other girls press for details, Aika clams up, too shy to explain the club's unusual activities, and without further explanation, she drags him to the hallway and reminds him of their plan, which Kamito does not even remember making. Once inside, Kamito apologizes to a disappointed Reiko, who reluctantly wishes him good luck. Meanwhile, back in her room, Reiko's friends gossip about how close Kamito and Aika have been lately, but Reiko insists that since Aika is stubborn, Kamito is simply counseling her on how to be more friendly. The gossip-loving girls are not interested in such a wholesome explanation and suggest that Kamito and Aika must actually be a couple. Reiko tries to control her emotions and grips her chair because she wants a piece of that Kamito meat. Her friends even suggest that Aika must have already kissed Kamito in his room since they are always together, and the very idea sends the hopeless romantic Reiko into a spiral. Overcome with jealousy and despair, she lets out a dramatic scream and runs out of the room in tears, leaving her friends baffled. Meanwhile, Kamito and Aika are merely planning a party for the entire school, compiling a list of commoner food and beverages to serve. Back in the classroom, Kamito notices one of Reiko's friends crying like a peach and decides to play the hero, while Reiko is also sobbing and wearing as little clothing as possible. Just then, Kamito knocks on her door to ask what is wrong, but Reiko insists she cannot talk to him. After some gentle convincing, the milk factory finally opens the door. The moment they lock eyes, they both realize that Reiko looks exactly like Bonnie Blue and are startled at the same time. Moments later, they share tea, and she confesses how she lost her temper and yelled at her friend. Kamito listens patiently, and seeing her tears, becomes determined to fix this stupid little mess. He heads back to his room hoping for quiet, only to find the annoying Aika waiting for him. It turns out she was spying on the entire melodrama and is already fully aware of the situation. Kamito wants to help Reiko at any cost and begins devising a plan. Aika realizes he needs emotional support and, in a surprisingly selfless move, suggests they redirect their party plans to cheer Reiko up, even volunteering to use her party accessories for this mission despite their different plans. Kamito is touched by her sacrifice and tells her she is genuinely a good person deep down. Flustered by this, Aika headbutts him before walking out in embarrassment. The next day, the Great Reconciliation Plan goes into action. Kamito gathers all the girls and announces a special commoner experience party. Just then, Reiko walks in, not her usual prim and proper self, but dressed in casual, perfectly ordinary clothes, leaving her classmates in awe. She has transformed her voice, styled her hair differently, and applied makeup like a commoner girl. Then Reiko pulls a smartphone from her pocket and sends a text message. The vibration startles a classmate, and she tells everyone to open their desks for a surprise gift. They all have brand new smartphones, and Reiko even teaches them how to use them. She gives a heartfelt apology to her friend via text, like a toxic girlfriend, and the two go through a cycle of emotional ovulation and squash their beef with a cringe selfie. Soon, the entire class is obsessed with their new gadgets, making Daddy Kamito giddy with joy. Later, Reiko thanks Kamito for helping her mend things with her friend. He's just glad to help, but Reiko is already planning to confess her feelings. Unfortunately, the stupid cabbage head cuts her off to explain that the whole party was actually Aika's idea, adding that Aika wanted to throw a party for herself but decided to help Reiko instead, which is the absolute worst thing he could have said when Reiko was ready to gobble up his biological instrument. Hearing that Aika was the mastermind, Reiko spirals into a frenzy, runs off with tears in her eyes, and storms directly into Kamito's room where Aika is lounging and reading comic books. Without holding back, Reiko declares how much she hates Aika and calls her an idiot. Aika immediately jumps to her feet and fires back, saying Reiko should be thanking her instead. Within seconds, the two are locked in a full-blown wrestling match on Kamito's bed, while he can only stare, mesmerized by their thighs rubbing together. When he finally snaps out of it and tries to intervene, a cushion slams into his face. After Reiko leaves, Kamito and Aika have a quiet moment. Aika opens up about her past, explaining she used to be just like the other girls. But in 4th grade, a serious illness and high fever changed everything because when she woke up, some memories were gone and her personality had shifted. She tells Kamito she does not mind the fight with Reiko because at least she has his video games and manga for company. Just as the mood gets sentimental, Karen and Hakuwa burst in, each holding applications to officially join the Commoners Club. Moments later, Reiko also arrives and demands to join as Kamito gets up to handle the situation. Aika refuses to let her rivals into their exclusive 2-person club, but Kamito wants everyone included, and Reiko thanks him with her thighs. Unfortunately, the sweet moment quickly devolves into chaos. Reiko and Aika start bickering. Hakuwa suddenly gets inspired and scribbles equations on the wall, and Karen tries to snap a picture of her. In the middle of this mayhem, Miyuki walks in with a giant pair of scissors to castrate Kamito's ding-dong. In a desperate effort to save his manhood, Kamito plays a video of muscular men and loudly confesses his love for bearded guys, a declaration that stops everyone in their tracks, leaving the girls utterly shocked and confused. In the next scene, we see a sterile, soundproof radio station instead of the academy, where a girl named Eri Haney, a famous singer and voice actress who also happens to be Kamito's childhood friend, has just finished a radio broadcast but does not seem very happy about it. Eri gets a text from Kamito, who apparently praised her voice in a way only he could make irritating. Back at Saikoin Academy, Kamito wakes to a familiar sight, a small naked genius sleeping soundly in his bed. He helps the girl get dressed, and they head to the kitchen. Since this potato head has nothing but potatoes in his refrigerator, he starts peeling them while Hanae politely waits beside him. As Kamito mashes the potatoes, she joins in to make a potato cake, and he is genuinely impressed watching the certified genius struggle with the simple act of cooking. However, the mental exertion is too much for her, as Hanae suddenly takes her clothes off and begins doodling complex equations all over the walls, and the poor boy does everything he can to prevent the situation from getting more awkward. After the snack, Hakuwa confides in Kamito about how she never had a proper childhood. When he asks what she did growing up, Hakuwa claims she made a lot of CPU circuit diagrams. Hearing this, he asks her a few stupid riddles about frogs, but she cannot guess the right answer. Since the genius is used to knowing everything, she refuses to give up, but she cannot crack the commoner's question and ends up annoyed at him. Later, while escorting Hakuwa back to her lab, he notices a handcrafted stuffed animal that looks exactly like him, but she quickly pushes him out and slams the door in embarrassment. Meanwhile, the other club members are holding a secret war council. Reiko, Karen, and Aika have gathered to discuss what they have deemed the Hakuwa problem, seething with jealousy over how much attention Kamito showers on the little genius and complaining that Hakuwa has a foolproof method for getting what she wants. As whenever Kamito ignores her, she strips naked and scribbles on the walls, an act that immediately gets his full attention. For a moment, Reiko wonders if she should strip naked in front of him as well, eager to take a bite of that commoner carrot, while Karen seems to have some feelings for Hakuwa and is committed to unaliving Kamito at any cost. Eventually, the girls agree they must defeat Hakuwa so that Kamito is left alone. Later, they wait for her inside Kamito's room like a bunch of clingy ex-girlfriends, and when she arrives looking for him, she is disappointed he is not there. As she turns to leave, Karen blocks the exit, and the girls insist they can have fun together as friends even without Kamito. What follows is a painful and awkward attempt to force a friendship. They offer her tea and pastries, which he completely ignores in favor of reading a manga. Karen even tries to hand feed her, but Hakuwa does not budge. Even after getting dressed as Kamito, her plan totally backfires. After several failed attempts to get a reaction, Reiko has Miyuki bring Hakuwa's favorite food, which finally gets her attention, and the little girl agrees to eat. A well-fed Hakuwa is an inspired Hakuwa. She tries to take off her clothes, and the wall becomes her canvas once again. The girls try to stop her, but it is like trying to reason with a hurricane. By the time she tires herself out and falls asleep, the girls are mentally and emotionally drained. They look at the sleeping girl, an equation-covered wall, and finally understand the sheer exhaustion Kamito must feel every day. Just then, Hakuwa's maid arrives to take her back to her lab. After waking her, the little girl proudly announces that she spent the day with her new friends, a comment that melts the three girls' hearts. Before leaving, Hakuwa asks Kamito's stupid frog riddle to the group, and while the blondie and the brunette sit dumbfounded, Aika the redhead answers it correctly. The little girl's face lights up as she realizes that Aika has something more than just shiny balloons. The next day, Kamito is talking to a girl who seems to be mad at him. It turns out he is playing a dating simulator on his handheld console. The game's main love interest is voiced by his childhood friend Eri Hane, and he flirts with a 2D character like classic beta male. Right when he is about to kiss the screen, Aika walks in and notices this weirdo talking to a virtual girl. For a moment, she gets mad at him for talking to other girls secretly, but Kamito explains that since the 2D character is voiced by his friend Eri, he plays to support her work. Aika is intrigued by this concept and insists on playing the game. She's immediately sucked in, blushing and getting flustered as she forms a bizarre 50 Shades of Grey connection with the game's protagonist, so Kamito leaves to give her privacy. Aika gets so immersed that she forgets she is in Kamito's bed. Just then, Reiko walks in looking for him. Aika tells her to park her ass outside, but Reiko insists on waiting for his return. Now left alone together in the lion's den, a commoner's bedroom, their natural curiosity gets the better of them, and they begin to investigate. Their first major discovery is Kamito's manga collection. After noting that every cover features a girl with humongous knockers, they come to the only logical conclusion their sheltered minds can muster. Kamito is a massive pervert who is only interested in girls. However, Aika loses interest and leaves to grab something from his mini fridge. The sheltered girls are shocked to find a bottle of soda, a completely foreign object to them. Aika claims she found it first and wants to drink it alone, and Reiko reluctantly agrees, but seeing her disappointment, Aika nervously agrees to share the commoner's drink. Later, they sit down in his room and pour the soda. After a moment of hesitation, they both take a sip, but the aggressive fizz is a shock to their whack digestive systems, and they simultaneously spit the drink all over each other. Soaked and sticky, they have no choice but to strip off their uniforms, leaving them in only their underwear. However, an argument immediately breaks out over the proper way to fold Aika's clothes. One thing leads to another, and they find themselves wrestling and tumbling onto Kamito's bed in an awkward, compromising heap. It is at this exact moment of peak chaos that Kamito returns from his meeting. His eyes go wide as he is met with the unbelievable sight of his two main love interests, half-naked and tangled together on his bed. Later, Kamito is summoned to the principal's office, where he is greeted by the headmistress and Miyuki, whose deadpan expression gives Jason Statham severe competition. They have groundbreaking news. The construction of a special site for their upcoming field trip is complete. Miyuki reveals they have built an entire theme park called Showmanland, a sprawling park meticulously designed to replicate a commoner's town. Kamito's role is to be their guide, and Miyuki reminds him that his biological instrument is on the line. With the threat of castration hanging over his head like a guillotine, he has no choice but to accept his role as tour guide. The much-anticipated journey to Showmanland begins. On the bus, the atmosphere is electric, with Reiko and her friends buzzing with excitement about the wonders they are about to witness. But Aika is in her own world, nervously rehearsing how to order a teriyaki burger combo with Coke Zero to sound cool. Upon arrival, the girls are led not into a park, but into a strange, windowless room that turns out to be a giant elevator. It descends, and a massive screen activates, revealing their destination, a completely normal, average-looking city. To Kamito, it is a sight that would bore a toddler to tears, but to the girls, it is the most magical thing they have ever seen. They lose their collective minds over the most mundane details, gasping in awe at pedestrian crossings and traffic lights as if witnessing the birth of a new galaxy. One chick even loses her mind, literally. As everyone hobbles outside, Miyuki announces their first attraction, a blatant parody of McDonald's, explaining the alien concept of placing an order at a counter, waiting for your number to be called, and then the true horror, picking up your own food. The girls are baffled, convinced they will be waiting for hours for their meals to be cooked, which only adds to Kamito's utter shock. However, Miyuki explains that since this is a fast food restaurant, their food will be ready in just 1 minute, causing chaos all over once again. As they approach the counter, a wave of panic washes over the group. Aika, who had been practicing for this exact moment, completely freezes as Kamito motivates her to be brave. Meanwhile, Reiko grabs her non-existent balls and steps forward, but she is immediately stumped by the menu. Seeing her total meltdown, Kamito intervenes to save the day. He calmly helps Reiko decide and even gives her the best food items to order. Karen, in a rare moment of pure, unadulterated joy, immediately chooses the combo that comes with a cute doll. After everyone finally gets their food, Kamito notices that Aika has once again isolated herself, so he sits down right between her and the other girls to diffuse the tension. But just as he takes a massive bite of his hamburger, his face lights up with an expression of pure theatrical ecstasy, as if he has just tasted a 5-star meal. His over-the-top reaction shocks his classmates, who cannot believe a simple hamburger could be so delicious. Amidst all the wonder and excitement, Aika does not seem to be bothered by it and simply sips her drink. The next stop on the tour is a classic Japanese arcade. The girls are immediately mesmerized by the claw machines. Reiko, with her natural grace, manages to win a stuffed animal, earning a round of applause from her friends. Kamito watches, thinking to himself how Aika would dominate at the dance games. He gently approaches her, hoping to lift her spirits, but he is swarmed by other girls wanting to learn the secrets of the claw machine. Feeling left out, Aika mumbles that she is going to get some juice and slips away. He then teaches the dumb broads how to play the stupid game when he accidentally touches a girl's hand. She almost drips warm gravy from her moist organ, but it stops when she wins a cute doll. The group then gravitates towards a dance machine. Kamito explains the basic concept: follow the arrows on the screen to score points. He demonstrates by dancing, causing everyone to leak engine oil from their legs. As the girls step in to dance, they run into a bunch of tough moves. Just then, Aika steps onto the platform and gives the dumb chicks a breathtaking performance. She moves with a confidence they have never seen before, a jaw-dropping display of skill that leaves the entire class speechless. At last, she gives her dancing partner a thumbs up but gets immediately embarrassed. This time, however, the girls are not looking at her in pity but with pure admiration. Everyone flocks around her, begging her to teach them how to dance like her. In that moment, Aika's deepest wish finally comes true, as she is now extremely popular among her friends. She then leads the group to a coffee shop and flawlessly orders one of the most ridiculously complicated drinks on the menu, leaving everyone impressed. Meanwhile, Reiko simply watches this new shift in the social dynamics. When the drinks arrive, the girls are stumped by the little hole in the lid. Embracing her role as the experienced one, Aika demonstrates how to drink from it, only to be burned by the hot coffee. While she tries to play it off, her pained expression gives her away. However, this moment breaks the final barrier. Seeing her as both cool and relatable, the girls eagerly ask for her phone number so they can exchange messages. As this unfolds, Karen is spotted off to the side, completely absorbed in cuddling an adorable puppy. Meanwhile, Hakawa is seen in the empty halls of the academy looking for Kamito. Her personal maid gently breaks the news that everyone is on a field trip, making her feel all alone. The final stop of the day is a clothing store. Aika has fully embraced her new role in the group and explains to her classmates that ripped trousers are not defective but a very popular fashion statement. Kamito watches from the sidelines like a proud father as his bratty little friend is finally connecting with the other girls. His attention is then drawn to Karen, who is awkwardly examining a stylish outfit. She clearly likes it but is completely out of her element. She stands in front of the mirror completely enchanted by the color but quickly discards it to protect her hardcore identity. Kamito tries to encourage her, but she gets spooked and claims she would never wear such stupid clothes. When Kamito does not believe her, Karen's defense mechanism kicks in and she draws her katana to threaten him. However, Kamito reminds her that he has already beaten her before, which is enough for the girl to tremble in fear. She takes off her clothes in front of him, and Kamito tells her to try on the clothes. Karen hops inside the dressing room like a monkey, while Kamito waits for her. Moments later, she emerges looking absolutely stunning. Kamito, the thigh connoisseur, is speechless as he gazes at all the curves and areas of Karen's body. As she trembles in embarrassment, Kamito assures her that her body is literally perfect, which makes her blush furiously. He tells Karen to dress like that more often so he can look at her every day. The comment is too much for her to handle, so Karen gives him a light smack and runs away in embarrassment. That night, back at the hotel, Aika and Reiko are forced to be roommates, and the tension is so thick you could cut it. Aika is busy texting her friends while Reiko feels a little bit isolated. A brief moment later, Aika surprisingly shares a vulnerable moment with Reiko. She wants Reiko to check her text message before sending it out to all of their friends, which explains how her straightforward personality gave the impression that she was rude, which slowly caused the girls to be terrified of her, so Aika started to ignore everyone to protect her mental health. She then pulls out her phone and shows Reiko a long message that also talks about how she wants to become friends with everyone. Touched by this moment, Reiko agrees, and the two rivals work together to perfect the message. The next morning, Kamito is jolted awake by his maid, who seems like she is always angry with him. Ironically, the two have started developing a weird kind of friendship. Later, all the girls gather around for the morning breakfast. It turns out that Aika's message was well received as the girls warmly invite her to join their table, making her incredibly happy. Later, Kamito catches up with her by the elevators and congratulates her on achieving her goal, and then with the emotional intelligence of Joe Biden, he delivers a devastating blow. He explains that since Aika is now a popular girl, her role in the Commoners Club is officially over. He cheerfully tells her how she must now maintain her position by hanging out at tea parties. This revelation shatters Aika's world as the club was her lifeline, her special connection to him. As the elevator doors close on her heartbroken face, she is left utterly crushed. Seeking to let his balls breathe for a minute, Kamito heads to the hot baths, but his annoying friend Aika once again appears in a towel to soak away her sorrow. As the two argue over who gets to use the hot bath, Aika's friend suddenly enter the pool area. In a blind panic, Kamito dives underwater to hide from the semi-naked girls. Aika instinctively shields his position with her body, while her friends chat about some dumb stuff. Trapped beneath the surface, Kamito starts to run out of air, so he raises his head to take a breath, but he ends up with a full view of Aika's private parts. As he submerges himself underwater, the girls continue talking while Aika hides him from her friends. Kamito desperately needs to take a breath, so he mistakenly grabs Aika, which results in an elbow shot from her. Moments later, as the girls leave the pool area, Aika is shocked to find Kamito motionless. She immediately pulls his disgusting, limp body from the water and begins performing CPR, pressing her lips to his, hoping to breathe air into his lungs. At this exact moment of maximum misunderstanding, two of her friends return to the pool area, walking in on what looks like a passionate kiss between lovers. The next day, the rumor had spread like wildfire. The entire academy is buzzing with the news that Kamito and Aika are a couple. The clueless thigh connoisseur walks up to Aika to understand what is happening, but just then, a furious Karen approaches him and punches him hard in the face before running away. Back in Kamito's room, the Commoners Club reconvenes for an emergency meeting. Aika claims she did not kiss Kamito, which relieves the graceful Reiko, who tells Aika to clear the misunderstanding and send a message to all her friends. But just then, Kamito walks into the room and Aika decides to wait a little longer to send out that message, which causes another fallout between the two girls. The next morning, Miyuki is seen walking through the academy's garden by herself. She runs into an aristocratic girl who is on her morning run. However, she is confused as to why Miyuki is working as a servant. It is revealed that Miyuki belongs to a family of incredibly high status, making her position as a maid a deep mystery. However, she politely ignores the aristocratic girl and walks away. Miyuki then walks into Kamito's room to wake him up, but surprisingly, she gently kisses him on the lips. As always, Kamito wakes up with Miyuki staring down at him with those killer eyes. The day begins with Kamito showing Aika a new commoner marvel, a fortune-telling app. The 2D animated girl in the app claims that Aika has no filter on what she says and gets hurt over the smallest things, which is extremely exciting to her, and she is convinced that the app can also see the future. When Kamito mentions that her lucky color is green, Aika dresses up in an entire green outfit to remain lucky at all times. To fully activate this, Kamito insists she must carry green leaves in her hands and perform a special dance for good fortune. Aika is hard to prank, but this time she believes Kamito's lies and starts dancing comically. Just as she is practicing the gesture, the other girls arrive to witness the bizarre spectacle. After Kamito explains the situation, the girls decide to test the app. It calls Reiko a social butterfly and Karen a tough personality on the outside who is actually a softie on the inside. Hakuwa is even more accurate as the 2D fortune teller tags her as a scientist with creative vision. However, Karen refuses to believe she is a softie and tries to fight with Kamito. When he redoes the test, it calls Karen a scatterbrained dumb chick with huge buttocks, making her furious. However, the real fun begins with a compatibility test, and everyone agrees to it, which starts making Kamito slightly intimidated. They decide to follow alphabetical order, and Aika goes first to check her compatibility with Kamito. As the girls tower over him to check the results, they find out that she got an 80% compatibility score with Kamito. Aika becomes ecstatic after finding out they can make a very loving couple and screams in excitement. Reiko goes next with a compatibility test and gets a whopping 90% score, easily beating Aika. Realizing that she can even get railed by Kamito with this score, Reiko cannot contain her imagination. She starts daydreaming about her night with Kamito while Aika fumes with anger. Meanwhile, Hakuwa gets a perfectly neutral 50%, which she accepts with logical detachment. Karen, initially refusing, finally caves to peer pressure. To everyone's surprise, she gets a soul-crushing 0% compatibility and furiously pulls out her katana. Just then, Kamito realizes that he made an error with the date of birth and redoes it, which turns out a perfect score of 100% compatibility, and also mentions that her romantic attacks will become more aggressive. As Aika and Reiko fight to get the perfect score, they start changing the details to be the perfect partner for Kamito. This results in an odd environment in the room as the two girls fight each other while Karen is mesmerized by Kamito and starts imagining stuff with him. At this point, Karen becomes the voice of reason and tells the girls to control their hormones. However, she is eventually dragged into this argument. Hakuwa turns to Kamito, and he instantly realizes she is hungry. Seeing this as his chance to escape the chaos, Kamito slips away with her to go make a potato cake. The next day, Miyuki wakes him with her usual gothic presence, but this time Kamito asks why she is always so close to him in the morning. While Miyuki stands in silence, he suggests that his phone alarm can make her job easier, but she claims that it is her duty and she must wake him up. However, when Kamito mentions that using a phone alarm is going to save her a lot of energy, Miyuki calmly offers to break his Samsung phone as an alternative and ends the discussion. Later, Kamito watches some UFC fights in a corridor to enjoy a moment of peace, but he's interrupted by a shy-looking Karen. Her mind flashes back to the app's prediction and takes the suggestion literally. Without a second thought, she launches a surprise attack at Kamito, which slightly cuts his jacket. Immediately horrified by what she has done, her aggressive facade crumbles, and she insists on taking him to her room to settle this battle. While Kamito is hesitant at first, Karen grabs his hand and drags him inside her room. Kamito is surprised to find her room as Spartan as a dojo. As she prepares her sewing kit, Karen asks him to turn around while she changes into the stylish outfit they bought together. Seconds later, Kamito feels the presence of Karen right behind him and turns around. He cannot stop staring at her chest and even looks thirstily at her pants. Kamito compliments her for her attire, making her blush. While she meticulously repairs his jacket, Kamito offhandedly mentions how Karen would make an amazing waifu, a remark that causes her to completely lose composure. As she hands the jacket back to him, she also notices his torn shirt and insists on fixing it. She forces Kamito to take it off and peels it from his body. As Kamito lies on the ground, Karen approaches close to him and gazes at his body. She even takes a bold move to touch him and understands why he is stronger than her. Sensing her insecurity, Kamito praises her incredible dedication and skill, calling it beautiful. His sincere words touch her deeply, leaving her flustered and speechless. However, their moment is shattered by Aika, Reiko, and Hakuwa barging into the room, looking for them. In a blind panic, Karen shoves the half-naked Kamito into her wardrobe. Inside the cramped darkness, Kamito becomes acutely aware of Karen and ends up collapsing on her chest. This causes a slight commotion inside, which is too much for the flimsy furniture. As a result, the wardrobe door bursts open, collapsing and spilling its contents onto the floor. Aika, Reiko, and Hakuwa stare in stunned silence at the tangled, compromising heap of a shirtless Kamito and a mortified Karen. Thinking fast, Aika picks up a phone showing a bunch of muscular men that he was watching earlier. Nervously, Kamito improvises and claims that he was simply reading Karen's future, which requires them to be half-naked. However, Aika has been pranked one too many times by him and locks his leg like the wrestlers in his mobile phone. On the other hand, Hakuwa is dealing with the emotional fallout from the compatibility test. She is left in quite a melancholy over her 50% score. When her maid arrives to check up on her, she notices Hakuwa has made a drawing of Kamito's face on her plate. She even notices the handmade Kamito doll on her bedside and gets concerned for her well-being. As a result, the maid calls an emergency council meeting with her colleagues, and the verdict is unanimous. The little genius is in love. Filled with a sense of righteous purpose, the maids hatch a grand, elaborate plan to make Kamito fall in love with Hakuwa. Meanwhile, back in a commoners club, Kamito is giving a lecture on another bizarre aspect of his world, maid cafes. While the girls have their own ideas about what this might be, Kamito explains that they are themed restaurants where waitresses roleplay as maids. This is a real nutcracker for the ladies, and they curiously listen to this rambling. Kamito adds that maids in the commoners' world are vastly different from the professionals at this academy. When Reiko asks if he likes maids, Kamito agrees because in his society, it is almost a fantasy to have a maid. Hearing this, Reiko declares that they must immediately book a session at the academy's cafeteria to investigate this commoner fantasy firsthand. When Kamito arrives, he finds his friends have fully committed to the bit. They are all dressed in frilly maid uniforms, ready to serve him. Reiko, taking on a role of head maid, dramatically calls him master. Kamito explains that cafe maids must serve their customers with love, and Aika gets jealous of Reiko stealing his attention. However, Kamito diverts their attention and teaches them that if he orders a drink, they must deliver it with proper love. Since the girls have no idea what this creep is talking about, Karen threatens him to demonstrate. So Kamito stands up and shows them how the food is to be delivered with love, acting almost like a Japanese James Charles. The girls find it utterly ridiculous, and they leave this Jeffrey Epstein wannabe inside the cafe by himself. Meanwhile, the maid council learns about Kamito's attraction towards maids and starts its own preparation. Later, Aika brings a rice omelette for Kamito and tries to deliver it with love, but she finds it extremely cringe. Karen draws an injured rabbit with ketchup on his plate like a serial unlover while she pretends to bleed on top of it. The sweet Hakuwa tries to entertain Kim by playing rock, paper, scissors, but she's eventually stopped by Reiko, who then starts singing a Kanye West song so terribly that the very foundations of the building shake and glasses shatter, causing mayhem all around. As Aika criticizes her singing, another argument breaks out while Hakuwa is once again stripped naked, scribbling her equations on the dinner table. From the hallway, Hakuwa's real maids observe the entire disaster. Since they witness Kamito in the middle of this chaos, they arrive at the completely wrong conclusion that he has a maid fetish. Later, Hakuwa's head maid approaches Kamito and, under the guise of showing him what real maids in action look like, invites him to Hakuwa's lab, which is the start of their orchestrated date. She takes him inside the hallway and proceeds to show him around. Kamito watches in awe as Hakuwa enters a creative trance, almost like Stephen Hawking in his office when he was not twisted up like a noodle. He notices how the maids move in silent, synchronized precision to transcribe her work and is impressed by it. Later, the maid brings Hakuwa to Kamito, and she asks the little girl to show him around the facility. Seeing Hakuwa grab his hands, all the maids lose their minds in excitement like a bunch of creeps. She then takes Kamito to a giant indoor sandbox designed for Hakuwa to clear her mind. As Kamito and Hakuwa begin to play together, they notice the maids are still there, watching them with sadistic intensity and claiming it is their free time. When lunchtime arrives, the maids escort them to the staff cafeteria, where Kamito and Hakuwa hold hands like brother and sister. As they reach the dining area, a maid tells him that since they do not have extra plates, Kamito and Hakuwa have to share a single plate. Even the food has creepy sentences written all over it, which naturally makes Kamito extremely awkward. Kamito notices a bunch of empty plates, but another maid pretends to fall and breaks all of them. With no other option, he starts feeding the little girl, but the creepy maids all yelp in excitement. The spoons are also tipped over by one of the maids, making everything weirder every second, and now Kamito is forced to use the same spoon while Hakuwa sweetly feeds him. At last, just as the two are sharing a drink from the same cup, Miyuki enters the room. Her ice-cold presence immediately snaps the other maids to attention. She informs them that an urgent request from a company came in while they were slacking off like a bunch of idiots on Jake Paul's podcast. Her tone is sharp, and the maids scatter. Afterwards, Kamito apologizes to Hakuwa's maid for the trouble, admitting that even after all that, he is still not sure what a maid's job really entails, but he genuinely adds that because of this bizarre day, he was able to see a whole new side of Hakuwa's personality. That night, the maids celebrate their supposed victory, delusionally believing that Kamito is attracted to Hakuwa, and they will soon be in a relationship. Meanwhile, all the other girls start practicing how to become better maids in their rooms, as they all want a piece of that Kamito barbecue. The next day, Kamito decides it is time to execute his masterpiece of pranks. He calls Aika to his room for a private meeting, telling her he wants to speak with her and her alone. The request makes her release her hormones, her mind immediately jumping to romantic conclusions as Kamito asks her to take a seat on his bed, where she nervously crashes beside him. Just then, he presents her with a gift. While her thighs flutter with happiness and she asks why he's giving her a gift randomly, Kamito maintains his composure and stays silent. He then asks Aika to open the box, which contains a stupid-looking bright yellow suit. Kamito, with the solemn expression of a sage, tells her this is a secret weapon that will finally make her the most popular girl in school. Seizing the intimate moment, Aika asks him if this is some weird prank he is playing on her. Kamito's balls are in danger, so he quickly explains with deep gravity that wearing a yellow suit and pointing fingers is considered sacred between close commoner friends. Aika has been pranked by him several times, so she gets suspicious. However, Kamito is prepared for this and shows her a video of the real-life Japanese comedian Dandy Seiko, famous for his finger gesture, followed by a barrage of internet searches showing thousands of fans imitating the gesture. Aika does not realize this is a prank, and with such a meticulously crafted scheme, she is completely convinced. Within minutes, Aika changes into her new outfit and even tries out the weird gesture. Kamito takes a couple of pictures of her and even teaches her some extra absurd moves. As the girl celebrates by imitating a famous celebrity, Kamito prepares himself to get beaten after revealing the truth about his prank, but right then Aika bolts from the room, eager to spread the gospel of the finger gesture to the entire academy. As Kamito chases after her, he runs headfirst into Miyuki. His hands automatically move toward her beautifully crafted thighs as he stares right at her tiger. After a brief awkward moment, he springs out of Miyuki's skirt while she lies down on the floor, ready to surrender herself to Kamito's tongue as he apologizes for his mistake. Miyuki casually mentions how she does not mind him touching her. Meanwhile, Aika is running down the hallway in her yellow suit when Reiko notices her. She then chases after Aika, demanding to know what this outfit is about. Eventually, Aika explains how this suit is worn by a famous commoner called Dandy Seiko, but when she makes the finger gesture, Reiko realizes this girl has lost her marbles. When she finds out that Kamito gave her this outfit, Reiko's jealousy turns into a desire to join in this weird trend, So the two start practicing the weird finger gesture together like a couple of Dumbos. By the time Kamito arrives at his classroom, the finger gesture pandemic has taken over. The entire class is dressed in yellow and performing the gesture in unison. Later, the tone shifts dramatically. Reiko is walking down the hall when she overhears Kamito on the phone with an old friend from home, complaining about how tired he is getting of the academy since there are only chicks in this place, that he cannot handle the stress of being careful around girls all the time, and mentioning how guys are way better friends than girls. Reiko misinterprets this as him wanting to leave the school for good. Without wasting any time, she immediately gathers the Commoners Club, Aika, Karen, and Hakua, for an emergency meeting to share the terrible news, and they must now come up with a plan to stop him from leaving. In a stroke of absolute unhinged genius, Aika suggests the obvious solution. If Kamito misses having guys around, then they should become boys. Since they cannot grow a ding-dong overnight, they begin to brainstorm. Karen gets up with a stupid idea and explains how every time she faced off with Kamito, he always looked at her thighs, so the girls decide to practice his habit of staring down at girls' legs. Then, remembering his fake fetish, they ask a maid to bring them a muscle suit. Aika wins the rock-paper-scissors battle to wear it but ends up looking like the Liver King. They also add a samurai ponytail along with a bow tie for a touch of class, and for the crucial finishing touch, they need a manly scent. After some careful deliberation, the girls decide on the most masculine aroma they can think of: grilled meat seasoning. Fully prepared, all the girls try to act tough and masculine and march to Kamito's room, where he is greeted by a ridiculous and confusing sight, asking them why they smell like a barbecue. However, the girls proudly explain their plan. They heard he was considering leaving because he missed his male classmates, so they put on this performance to convince him to stay. Kamito is stunned into silence for a moment, looking at the absurd, meat-scented, cross-dressing mess in front of him. Aika flexes in her muscle suit. Reiko tries to act cool and aloof. Karen stands stoically, and Hakua just stares blankly. It is the most insane, misguided, and heartfelt thing anyone has ever done for him. However, Kamito spreads a warm smile across his face and reassures them that they do not need to worry, that he has no intention to leave the academy, and promises to remain at the school. The next day, Kamito walks through the peaceful compound of the academy to cool off his sweaty tennis balls. He finds himself walking back to his empty classroom, having forgotten his pencil case. To his surprise, he finds Reiko diligently replenishing the chalk for the teachers. Kamito lets out a gentle smile as she is actually a pure-hearted girl. As the two stand together by the window, they talk about some dumb stuff like how beautiful the skies are. Kamito notices how stunning Reiko looks right now and immediately shifts his gaze. To avoid distraction, she closes the curtains and decides to seize the intimate moment. Reiko expresses her desire to help him with the flower arranging class. Kamito knows this is just a smoke screen for a ground-and-pound ceremony and quickly agrees to her request. Then Reiko makes a much bolder move, asking him to start calling her by her first name, as she wants them to be more than friends and convinces him to drop the formalities from now on. Later, the Commoners Club gathers in Kamito's room to discuss their agenda for the day, but Reiko coyly reminds Kamito not to forget their secret plan, immediately sparking Aika's suspicion and jealousy. Aika and Karen demand to know what they are plotting, but Kamito is once again caught between the chicks' quarrel. Meanwhile, Reiko enjoys the attention and simply smiles at the angry girls. However, their bickering is cut short when two maids enter the room, summoning both Reiko and Kamito to the headmistress's office. Since Reiko was not informed about their visit, she seems a little bothered by it. Inside the office, they are greeted by Reiko's family, her overbearing mother and her surprisingly timid older brother Masaomi. After the mother shares pleasantries with Reiko, her gaze shifts toward this disgusting boy, Kamito. The nervous boy has no idea what this is about and introduces himself. Masaomi is immediately hostile towards Kamito, furious that a boy is allowed near his precious sister. However, Reiko tells him that she is leaking a lot of gravy these days and is enjoying her time at school. Even then, Masaomi is not satisfied and yells at Kamito, but Reiko steps in to defend her potential lover and becomes furious at him. Miyuki tries to de-escalate the situation and explains that Kamito is homosexual and likes men with muscular bodies. This freaks out Masaomi even more, but his mother tells him to think with his head, not with his ding-dong. She then cuts in with a grave announcement that silences the room. She tells Reiko that her marriage has been finalized and she must leave the academy immediately to join her future husband. The news hits like a physical blow as Reiko glances at Kamito with her loving eyes. Seeing this, the mother requests him to leave the room, and he sadly walks out feeling like Addison Rae in front of Andrew Tate. Back in the club room, Kamito relays the horrible news about Reiko. The girls are stunned to hear this and all stand there with droopy faces. Kamito points out that Reiko is clearly miserable and proposes they do something to stop the engagement, as he cannot understand how Reiko's mother could do something so cruel to her own daughter. This galvanizes the group with a new purpose as they all partner up one last time. Later in the courtyard, they run into Masaomi again. He's clearly against Reiko's marriage and frantically tries to give Kamito his email address to coordinate a plan, but his mother suddenly appears and forces him to leave before they can come up with a plan. That night, the club members gather without Reiko, but the atmosphere is empty and depressing. Everyone starts imagining their life without Reiko, and it is painfully clear that everyone deeply wanted to clap that juicy can of tuna. In a moment of incredible character growth, Aika, Reiko's biggest rival, admits that she is worried and cannot just stand by and do nothing. Driven by a new sense of solidarity, Aika decides to call Reiko, but the school phones are restricted. However, Hakuwa does her magic and easily disables the limiter, turning them into normal cell phones. That night, Aika makes the call, which makes Reiko extremely happy. The two start talking, but Reiko tries to be dutiful, saying she must obey her family's commands. Aika listens to her with tears in her eyes and tells her to stop acting like a Republican president before the election. She reminds Reiko that if she leaves, she'll be alone in gym class, and that she is a precious friend to them all. Finally, Reiko breaks her composure and confesses that she does not want to get married, and that she wants to stay with her friends forever. That was all Aika needed. She promises Reiko to be patient until they find a way to save her. The next day, Aika reveals that Reiko wants to stay at the academy, so the rescue mission is on. Hakuwa immediately retrieves Masaomi's email address, and a plan is in place. Since the girls are aristocratic, Kamito takes leadership of the mission and declares war against arranged marriages like true Democrats. That night, the five of them, Kamito, Aika, Reiko, Hakuwa, and Karen, carefully sneak out of the academy under the cover of darkness. Their escape is almost flawless, almost as if they have been crawling with each other every night. But just as they reach a safe area, the group is discovered by the last person they wanted to see, Miyuki. For a tense moment, all of the students think their plan is over before it even began. However, Miyuki simply asks if this is an official Commoners Club activity, and when Kamito confirms that it is, she turns a blind eye. This was her cryptic permission, allowing the group to rescue Reiko at any cost. Outside, another maid shows them the way, and they slip out of the gates before getting inside a sleek black car waiting for them. It turns out to be none other than Masaomi and the two muscular men who first kidnapped Kamito. As they settle in, Masaomi gives his signal, and the car drives off into the night to crash a wedding and rescue Reiko once and for all. As the car reaches the major highway, Kamito asks Masaomi why he trusted him. Masaomi explains that since he is an aristocrat himself, he cannot be the one to crash a family wedding. A stupid logic, but it makes sense. Soon, the car pulls up to a hill overlooking Reiko's family mansion. Since the estate is crawling with extra security guards, Masaomi realizes that his plan has been exposed, so he appoints Kamito the commander of this mission and volunteers to risk his life for his sister. Karen, on the other hand, is determined to use her sword to defeat the guards because, for her, this is not a threat, it is an invitation. Before anyone can formulate a proper plan, Karen leaps down a hill and charges headlong into the fray. She pulls out her sword like Sasuke, alerting all the guards nearby. Then Karen unleashes her first attack, cracking the ground like a birthday cake. After all the guards are eradicated, Karen decides to launch her most powerful attack. Her sword creates a blade of fire so potent that it carves a massive hole in the mansion wall, creating a wide-open entrance for Reiko's friends. Just then, they are surrounded by a swarm of security guards, leaving no room for escape, but Karen urges everyone to go inside the building while she deals with the nasty security guards. She then unleashes her signature whirlwind technique, a spinning vortex of swordplay that strips them of their entire uniforms. On the other hand, Kamito, Aika, and Hakuwa rush inside, but their path is immediately blocked by the family's butler, Takamiya, a man who looks like he has an orange Bugatti. He approaches Masaomi and tries to convince him to drop this battle with his own family, but he ignores the butler and charges at him. Unfortunately, his attack is intercepted by Takamiya, causing Masaomi to collapse on the floor, but the battle has just begun. These two engage in a fierce high-stakes duel while Kamito, Aika, and Hakuwa press forward. Once inside, they encounter the next layer of security, a swarm of high-tech drones ready to attack them. But Aika embraces her delusional confidence and grabs a nearby vase and shatters it into pieces. She then expertly flings the broken pieces like Ukrainian soldiers, taking down the drones one by one. However, their victory is short-lived as a series of heavy security doors begins to close behind them, threatening to seal them off, but the little genius Hakuwa looks for the control room so she can hack the system to intercept the doors. Unfortunately, the final door is closing too fast, causing anxiety all around. Just then, the two muscular men from the car appear out of nowhere, holding the massive metal door open with sheer brute force. Hakuwa slips through, and she immediately starts hacking the mansion's main computer. In just a few seconds, all the metal doors slide open once again. However, they are faced by their final enemy, a giant Power Rangers-looking robot that blocks their path to the meeting room. But before the robot can crush them, Karen makes her dramatic re-entrance, now inexplicably dressed in a full samurai outfit. With a single devastating attack that is utterly ridiculous, she slices the robot clean in half. In a final attack, she manages to disable the robot but also shreds all of her clothes, leaving her entirely naked on top of it. The battle between the team and Masaomi gets even more brutal. as neither of them seems to lose their stamina. With the path clear, Hakuwa works her final bit of magic, hacking the leftover drones and reconfiguring them into a pair of makeshift rocket shoes for Kamito. He blasts through the mansion hallway and bursts into the formal meeting room just as the engagement is about to be finalized. Seeing this, Reiko's mother gets up and politely asks him to leave, but Kamito declares his complete and total disagreement with the arranged marriage. Reiko's mother, cold and unflinching, tells him the commoner could not possibly understand the importance of their traditions. Just as Aika and Hakuwa enter the room, Reiko starts shivering in agony because it has been 10 hours since she last sniffed Kamito's essence. In response, Kamito delivers a heartfelt speech, insisting that despite their different worlds, they have all managed to become precious friends, and Reiko's giant watermelons are needed at the academy for research purposes. Karen also arrives with her airbags barely covered to distract everyone's attention. Aika also steps in and, with tears in her eyes, announces that Reiko has the best knockers in the academy. At last, they all make their stupid finger gesture to show their support for Reiko. Finally, with tears pouring from her eyes, Reiko finds her voice. She stands up and announces that she will leave the family. Her mother warns her of the consequences. She will lose her status, her right to attend the academy, and become an ordinary girl. Kamito immediately interjects, assuring her that there is no problem and she can come live with him. He pulls Reiko away from her mother and promises to keep her happy. This declaration prompts Reiko's father to finally support her decision. In a final stunning twist, Reiko's mother begins to laugh like a witch. It turns out that the entire ordeal was orchestrated to test Reiko's ability to stand up for herself. She tells her daughter she is free to marry whomever she wishes, then turns to Kamito and asks him to take care of her forever, a statement that everyone in the room interprets as a marriage proposal. This causes a debate in the room as the other girls start getting jealous. The scene cuts back to the academy in the familiar chaos of Kamito's room. He's trying to apologize to Reiko for the misunderstanding his words caused. However, she simply reminds Kamito to start calling her by her first name. Before they can resolve anything, the rest of the girls jump in. The old arguments fire back up in a heated debate over who has the strongest claim to Kamito's affection. As Aika and Reiko bicker, Karen watches with a frustrated sigh, and Hakuwa, getting inspired by the passionate energy in the room, strips off her clothes and begins scribbling equations on the wall. The Commoners Club is back together, and their perfectly dysfunctional dynamic is restored.